Thanks for staying with us. The World Health Organization says the world is entering a new phase where large outbreaks of deadly diseases like Ebola are a new normal. Previous Ebola outbreaks affected small numbers of people, but the Democratic Republic of Congo is dealing with the second ever largest outbreak, which has killed 1,357 people. The largest outbreak in West Africa in 2014 to 2016 affected 28,616 people, mostly in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone. There were 11,310 deaths. A WHO expert, Dr. Mike Ryan, says countries and other bodies need to focus on preparing for new deadly epidemics, as roughly a quarter of Ebola infections in eastern Congo are estimated to be going undetected or found too late.
We believe at this point, and let me be very cautious here. We believe that we're probably detecting in excess of 75% of cases. We may be missing up to a quarter of cases. When someone dies in the community, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for the community, but it's a disaster for the response, because that person has been in the community potentially infecting others. So we must get earlier detection of cases. We must have more exhaustive identification of contacts. We need to convince all of those contacts to accept vaccination.
Welcome to our Africa Tech segment. Technology can be argued to be the greatest agent of change in the world today, and experts believe that although never without risk, technological breakthroughs promise innovative solutions to the most pressing global challenges of our time. They lead to improvement in people's lives, offer new ways of conducting businesses, while also supporting practices that support the environment. And some of the major players understand that the tech sector is moving quickly and it can be highly profitable. Joining us now is Jamiu Ijaodola, the Executive Director of the Engineering Summit Africa. Thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa.
Thank you very much for having me.
So how can we use technology to solve some of our national issues?
Well, smart nations support their own locally produced products, either covertly or overtly. I think our countries need to do more as regards strategically supporting our locally produced services. And I think our government should also do more as regards equipping our universities and our polytechnics with engineering-related hardware activities that will help amplify conversations on their activities. So I think if we can do that.
Yeah. Well, can you take us through some specific areas where you see big opportunities?
Well, definitely. We have seen our country producing large number of farm products, but then we still see quite a number of people who are still hungry. And I think that is as a result of the fact that we have not been able to leverage on technology as regards reducing wastage. So I think if we can have tech-related IoTs that can be used in managing the database of crop yield, I think we can use that means to reduce wastage of foods, and I think with that we'll be able to solve some of our problems.
Yeah, smart move. But it seems we have made progress with technological advancement, but many professionals think this is just hot air. What is your opinion?
Well, the situation is, I think many of the professionals, they are quite scared as regards losing their job. We are moving in the area of industrial revolution. That is when we would have much of machines being replaced. So I think our professionals should do more as regards looking out for the opportunities in this technological expansion instead of getting unnecessarily worried about losing their jobs. I think that's just the situation. We would have more expansion, and it will greatly improve our economy.
Well, what do you think is the greatest enabler to technological advancement in the country?
Well, I think that has to do much with the political will. That is when we have a quality leadership that funds tech-driven startups. I think if we can do that, it will improve our activities.
Well, what are some of the steps that we could take to change the narrative?
Well, our ministries, departments, and agencies should do more as regards being extremely responsive to innovative solutions. I think if we can leverage on each of those ministries, we'll be able to identify much of our activities. Thank you very much.
Jamiu Ijaudola, the Executive Director of the Engineering Summit Africa, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Now, Swaziland cannabis farmers fear businesses could go up in smoke after a new South African law. Following the recent South African court ruling allowing private growth and consumption of cannabis, South Africa's cannabis sector is about to explode, while Swazi gold growers in neighboring Swaziland, who depended on South Africa's demand, may face economic ruin.
Mbuso has been growing cannabis for 14 years. He lives and tends the illicit crop in Swaziland, which is now officially called Eswatini.
I need some money from Kanja. Secondly, I need this thing is came like to me because I farm. Sometimes some cops come and burn it.
Mbuso is just one of scores in this small kingdom who depend on high demand from their much larger neighbor, South Africa, for their potent cannabis strain known as Swazi Gold. Mbuso and others are worried that a recent legal amendment could choke their businesses. In September, South Africa's Constitutional Court decriminalized the use and cultivation of cannabis in private space. But the decision did not legalize its trade or distribution.
Now, in the spirit of protecting the environment, South Sudanese refugee Bidal Abraham uses his time in Uganda to promote a movement to conserve the environment. At 32 years old, he has already been forced to flee his home in South Sudan 3 times. Each time he made it safely to neighboring Uganda, but noticed a problem. There were always fewer trees. Take a look.
Abraham Bidal has had to flee his home in South Sudan 3 times. Each time the 32-year-old made it safely to neighboring Uganda, he says he noticed fewer trees along the route.
The first time the trees were many. The second time somehow. The third time now, trees are scarce.
Bilal could not stop the war he left behind, but he could plant trees and care for the land which welcomed him and his fellow refugees. His most recent escape was in May 2018, when fighting broke out in his hometown of Yei. He crossed the border with his pregnant wife and daughter and was settled on a small plot of land in Umugo Extension.
Trees also act as windbreakers. If you look at this kind of shelters we have here, if you don't have enough trees to stop wind, these shelters will be blown off.
Once covered in trees and bushes, the settlement is now largely for residential and agricultural use. Asiku Dalili is a project officer at Rural Initiative for Community Empowerment, RICE, which is working with UNHCR to promote reforestation in the area.
Our target this year is to reach 600,000 seedlings. So far, we are around 823,000 seedlings, which is above target. It is a target for both refugee and host communities.
More than 1.1 million trees have been planted in 4 settlements in the West Nile region since 2017. Though only 55% survived the harsh weather and varying soil conditions.
Well, that's it on the program today. Do have a lovely weekend. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Bye for now.